Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Nonprofit Resource Hub's second annual virtual conference, Storytelling Amplified, Strategies for Effective Communication and Engagement. I am Allison LaFerlita. I'm the Executive Director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. For those of you that aren't members with us or partners with us, or are somewhat unfamiliar with us, we are a trade association whose mission is to serve, be a resource to educate, and connect its members to the nonprofit community. At the same time, the NRH serves the nonprofit sector as a bridge connecting nonprofit organizations to resources like the ones that you have available to you today and to each other. This is a free service to nonprofit organizations and it is free to join. I am been an executive director for an awful long time and I've never had something like this available to me. So I would encourage all of you to go to the Nonprofit Resource Hub website this morning and join as a nonprofit partner, and you will enjoy many benefits and support resources. And the link will be in the chat to make it easy for you. So, our first session today and our first speaker is Scott Rosenkrans. He's the Associate Vice President of Donor Search AI. He's a renowned speaker in the fields of AI for nonprofits. I was saying to him earlier, I feel like we have like a celebrity with us. And I think that I want to give him as much time as possible to share with you his knowledge. He has recently shared his expertise at the AI Summit in New York City. And Scott is addressed to schedule scheduled to address the AFP icon in Toronto this April. Today, he's going to explore predictive AI versus generative AI, offering actionable insights for nonprofits. I know that this can be really overwhelming and confusing for those of you that are new to this. So Scott is going to help make it much easier. And with a talent for simplifying complex concepts, like I just said, and commitment to ethical practices, Scott is poised to guide us into the future of fundraising. Please join me in welcoming Scott. Scott, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm hoping to, like Allison said, just kind of break down some pretty key concepts here and make predictive and generative AI more applicable, more approachable, more understandable at the very least, and talk about how they're all being used in the nonprofit sector. So let me bring up my screen. And I'd love to make this, and I know there's a number of people joining today, which is incredibly exciting. Feel free to share, throw in any questions you have in the Q&A, in the chat. I'll probably be managing the Q&A more, but if there's anything I miss in the chat, I can always get to that later. Let me just reconfigure some things here. Okay, I believe everybody should be able to see my screen. As Allison mentioned, I'm Scott Rosenkrans. I'm from Donor Search AI. I've been in the nonprofit sector my entire career. I started as a prospect researcher. I've done capital campaigns. I've done consulting. I've done grateful patient philanthropy. But throughout that whole journey of different roles, I was always fascinated by data, by predictive modeling. So I've been building predictive models for the past 10 years, overseeing machine learning models for the past 6 years. And now at Donor Search, we have oversee our data science team on all custom machine learning models that are going out for nonprofits of all shapes and sizes. I'm also just fascinated by the technology and how fast it moves. So I co-host a podcast called Fundraising AI, where if you have 30 minutes to kill on a weekly basis, feel free to tune in. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. My colleague and I just talk about all news in AI and how it relates to the nonprofit sector, how we need to be wary of how the tools that the for-profits use, we don't have the same luxury of using it the same way. So we need to make sure that we're applying them in ethical, responsible, and beneficial ways for fundraising specifically. So before I get too deep into that, I just shared my bio. And yes, as Kellyanne said, please everyone introduce yourself. I'd love to see where everyone's coming from. I personally am in Warwick, New York, so not too far away from where I believe most of you are. I'm in Hudson Valley, about an hour and a half outside of the city. My wife was born and raised in Queens. We have family in Long Island, so we head down there pretty often. But my wife, our 2-year-old, we've been living up here for the past few years. If you're not familiar with Donor Search, we're a family-owned company that's been around for 15 plus years. Really the only ones in this data provider space that are family owned. So we're able to do things a little bit differently. We can really get, kind of dig in with our clients, roll up our sleeves, and do a lot of hand holding and custom work with them, as opposed to just having models that we turn on for everybody that are pre-existing and easy for us to move on from one client to another. Everyone on my team has come from nonprofits, and so we try to build the best models that we can and the models that we wish existed when we were sitting in your seats. Donor Search AI has been around for 3 years now. Actually, March was our 3-year anniversary, and we've handled a lot of data so far. We're doing 64 million predictions monthly. We've interrogated 77,000 different models to get to unique models for each individual. We're handling over $20 billion in donations and almost 100 million charitable gifts. We have 500 million emails sent. We're doing 11 trillion calculations overall with all these different models, all these different individuals coming through. I mean, there's so much data that we're being able to push through these machine learning environments that we're really my whole team loves digging into data and seeing what kind of trends and analyses we can find. And also, again, making this technology that kind of seems so far-fetched and unattainable really accessible and easy for everyone to understand and make use of and really apply in their day-to-day fundraising practices. So I'm sure there are some questions here with AI, right? I'm sure that all of you have heard about it over the past couple of years, definitely more in the last year and a half with ChatGPT and generative AI. And some of you may be using it, which is wonderful. I really hope that a lot of you are. Some of you may have some fears, which I understand they come up. They're not uncommon. You're definitely not alone if you have those fears. But I'm hoping that today I can help at least answer some of those questions. And if there's any interest in future communication or further communication, I love talking about this all the time. So please feel free to reach out to me with any questions that still are lingering after this webinar. But questions that often come up are, is AI going to take my job? What is AI to begin with? Is everything artificial intelligence, which is what it seems to be? I think there's AI in fridges now, which is just some of these things are a little bit unnecessary. But what happens if I don't use it? How do I find the time to learn it? Am I falling behind? Again, all very good questions. AI is this field that's really been around for a long time now. It's been around since the 50s. The first use of artificial intelligence was in a research, actually a grant proposal for the Rockefeller Foundation to fund a program to really dig into, for scientists and mathematicians, to really dig into new computer technologies with the goal of creating technology that allows humans to kind of offload some tasks. But it's been around for a while. It just becomes more and more prevalent in our day-to-day, especially in the past few years. It will not take your job, right? Again, we'll talk about this more, but with all these questions up here, for every one question we get, again, I've been talking about this for a while. We have our podcast. We're often at webinars and conferences. For every one question we get, I'm sure there's 10 questions that we don't get, that people just kind of have in their head and are afraid to get out, think that they're the only one feeling this way. But I promise you, I assure you, you are not the only one feeling this way. And any question you have, I'm confident that many others in today's session will have them as well. So please feel free to throw those questions out. We actually have a question now. Where do you see the greatest opportunity for AI to help nonprofits engage board members, both in their missions as well as fundraising strategies? That's a great question. I'm gonna get to that a little bit later on. So thank you for asking, but yeah, please throw any questions in here and I'll get to them when they fit in a little bit to the presentation. But this movie, I'm hoping everybody knows this movie. I'm aging myself. Ferris Bueller, wonderful movie, probably in my top 5. But I love this quote because it's appropriate for the movie, but also it's appropriate for technology if you just kind of change some of the words, right? You change life moves pretty fast to technology moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss out, right? You could completely miss out. AI is moving faster than any technology we've seen to date. Again, we have a weekly podcast, and past 2 episodes were just interviews, so we don't really get to talk about news. And now my colleague and I probably have an hour and a half worth to talk about, just because things are changing every single day in this space. And it feels like that has been the case since OpenAI rolled out ChatGPT in November of 2022. But if you don't jump in now, you're going to have a much harder time catching up, right? It's this constant train that's just moving at such a fast speed. It's better to jump in now and kind of learn along the way. Just dabble your toe, just kind of figure out some areas to get started and move past that fear of, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to get started. We'll again make it actionable in today's conference or today's session. So hopefully you can at least get some areas of where to begin, where to start, how to use it personally, professionally, whatever it is, to at least build up some of that confidence around how to use it, how to talk about it, how to use more of it in the future. But we've kind of been here before, right? And yes, AI is the big buzzword, but we've been here with other technologies, maybe not as fast moving, but the last one was the internet, right? For those who are around, 20 years ago in this space, the internet was another thing that nobody really knew what it was. We didn't know, should we use it? Shouldn't we use it? Don't know how to use it. Is the internet going to replace my job? But think about it today. Have you gone a day without using the internet in the last month, right? Would you hire someone that doesn't know how to use the internet, right? Internet has not replaced anyone's job. It made your job that much more efficient, that much more capable. It allowed you to do much more in a much smaller amount of time, right? AI is essentially the same concept. Before the internet, it was computers, right? You wouldn't hire anybody without computers, but for a while, computers were, it was a fear that they were going to take over people's jobs. Before that, it was calculators. There's a picture out there of professors protesting the use of calculators in schools. And now, like, you can't even, the TI-89 I had to purchase in high school because I couldn't get through classes without it. And it was encouraged, it was mandatory. So technology moves this way. We've kind of had these same conversations, but with different technologies in the past. It's just AI is this kind of a behemoth, if you will. So I already talked about what it is, but to explain kind of how it's evolved in itself, it really is kind of like this overarching umbrella, right? It's like sports. Sports is a field, but sports doesn't define every single field in there. There's football, there's baseball, there's basketball, there's field hockey, right? AI is a field that has a lot of subfields in it, right? And all those subfields, especially in today's day and age, they kind of just get rolled up to this umbrella of AI. But the definition of AI, while the definition is static, what it applies to is dynamic, right? In the 1950s, the AI that was accessible was not the type of AI we have today. It was doing completely different things. One of the earliest AI programs, it's probably going to be a drinking game. Granted, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, but anyone watching this and recording later could probably turn this into a drinking game every time I say AI. Actually, I don't recommend that. Anyway, one of the earliest AI programs in the 1950s was playing checkers, right? Checkers is a pretty simple game that we all kind of teach our children, right? To give a little bit of context, the number of combinations of moves in the game of checkers is 10 to the 20th power. So 10 with 20 zeros after it, right? That was in the 1950s, and that was like a game changer for the technological advancement. Now we have LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, like Bing, whatever it is, right? They can expertly navigate the English language. English language, possible combinations is 10 to the 570th power. So that's 570 zeros. That's unfathomable. The number of, just to put it kind of in more context, the number of atoms in the observable universe is estimated to be 10 to the 80th power. So 80 zeros, 80. And the English language is 10 to the 570th power. So light years beyond, and AI can answer a question in much more detail than I've ever been able to in a matter of seconds. It moves faster than I can read the words. So the way, and this is a phrase that you'll probably often hear as you kind of dig into AI, is today's AI is the worst it will ever be, right? Tomorrow, it's going to be better. Next week, it's going to be much better. 6 months from now, we're going to think that today's AI is just kind of child's play. So it's just constantly evolving. So that's why AI becomes this kind of intangible thing, because it's always meaning something different, or it's always being applied to something different. It seems just so kind of, well, this AI doesn't look like this AI. And it just kind of confuses, I think, those that aren't as involved in it. I think it confuses, well, really, again, what is AI to you? So like I was mentioning, it is kind of this umbrella, like sports, right? And so this is actually an image created by artificial intelligence, by DALL-E 3, a tool, an image or text-to-image tool put out there by OpenAI. And we originally used ChatGPT, the large language model, to say, give us an analogy for what AI is like. And it gave 30 of them, right? And one of them was, it's like a toolbox. And so then we went to DALL-E, which is the image generator, to say, all right, give us an image of an AI toolbox. And it put this together, which is, I mean, I wouldn't be able to draw this. This is much better than anything I could draw, but it's really a good representation of, it's not one thing. You don't have one tool to fix all the issues in your house. You don't just use a hammer to do plumbing, to, install something, to unscrew a light bulb. You have multiple tools, and each with their own specific purpose. So that's the same thing here. Generative AI, large language models, are obviously the big buzzword now, and they're going to continue to be for quite some time, but they're all kind of based on the mathematics of deep learning. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. Augmented reality, virtual reality, those are all components of applications of deep learning. NFT, non-fungible tokens, they kind of had their heyday for a while. I don't really hear about them anymore. They were going on through the pandemic. Blockchain kind of had its heyday, but it's really kind of underlying most everything. It just gets swept under the rug, but still a framework and a foundation for a lot of technology we're able to use today. And NLP, natural language processing, again, had its heyday when it was first coming out. Now we don't really talk about it because generative AI is utilizing technology like natural language processing, like being able to turn text into qualifiable information, right? Quantifiable information as well, and really turn just any letters that I write into a message, really understand the context of what that is. So it's moving, it's evolving always. And that's what makes it kind of hard to put your arms around and really get a good hold of. When we talk about different types of AI, we can kind of put them into two different buckets. There's narrow and there's general, right? Narrow is really where we are now, where each tool is designed for one specific task, right? I mentioned DALL-E. DALL-E is a text-to-image tool that just creates images. GPT 4.5 is a text tool that just creates text, right? There's Sora, which is OpenAI's new tool, which is text to video that just creates video. Each of those tools are wonderful at their tasks, but they just do that one thing, right? General AI is more like Rosie from the Jetsons. She can do everything, right? So when you use ChatGPT and you say, hey, can you write me this paragraph, or can you, analyze this appeal that I'm putting out, or can you put together an annual report for me to send to this specific donor? It does that great job, and then it's done. It doesn't get into its car, drive home, go home to its family, feed the family, clean the kitchen, read the children, a book story, and then put them to bed. It just does that one thing. General AI is this concept of something that can do one machine, one tool that can do anything a human can do, but better, faster, more efficient, without stops, without breaks, without human error. And that's kind of, there's always talk of when it's going to come out. It's going to come out in 6 months. It's going to come out in 15 years. And there's different estimates all the time. I think it's getting closer. I think what OpenAI has done with ChatGPT, really, they're doing a lot of work on behind the scenes. Me and my colleague have met with some of their data scientists last year, and the capabilities there are incredible. So I think we're going to see general AI relatively soon, but it's probably going to be phased out in different approaches just to not to kind of blow things up, figuratively. So moving into machine learning. Again, machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. It's really rule-based, right? You probably hear machine learning a lot. Anything that's kind of in the news now and saying this is AI, this ML, it really is applying to machine learning. Machine learning started in the 2000s and 2010s, really with the rise of big data. Machine learning needs big data. So big data was a buzzword for early 2000s. all that data is now being put to use into these types of algorithms, and they're really rule-based algorithms. I like to think about machine learning as like a game of Plinko for anybody that knows. You kind of put all these data points up top, they go down all these different branches and rules, and then end up in a bucket of yes or no, or large or small, whatever it is that the model's trying to predict. But it's all rule-based. If this and not this, then this, and so on, but to a magnitude that we just kind of can't comprehend in our own minds. So yeah, machine learning is really the component just that allowed us to advance what we can do with AI. And then deep learning is a completely different, it's built under machine learning, but it's a completely different approach. Deep learning is really applying patterns, identifying what is and what isn't in a certain way based on how patterns work, right? So this is how our brains work. This is how our brains learn things. We don't learn by rules. We don't learn that, I have a 2-year-old son, and he knows his animals now, but when he was learning his animals, he didn't learn that a cat is a cat because it has 4 legs and it has pointy ears, and go down a rule-based, kind of decision tree to say, okay, that's ultimately a cat. I'm not a good drawer. I could have drawn a very horrible picture of a cat, and he would have known that by seeing what is and what is not a cat. And it's all based on putting patterns together of, I see this thing, my parents don't label it a cat, so I know it's not a cat. I see this thing, my parents label it a cat, it is a cat, and these other things are kind of similar to it. So we never really went through and said, all these things are cats, all these things are not, but it's how deep learning works. And again, deep learning can do this much faster, much more comprehensive, much deeper than we can do in our own. And that's why it's being utilized at such a level like it is, with kind of all the largest companies in the world are using deep learning to power their tools. I like to think of it as like comparing the two. If machine learning is like a chef that went to the Culinary Institute of America, right? Classically trained chef with 30 years of experience, it knows, okay, you do this, and then 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 you're done, right? Deep learning is completely different. Deep learning is someone who grew up in a fully stocked professional kitchen with all the appliances, all the recipes, and had examples of, here's a finalized dish, here's a finalized dish. And then it just played around and said, all right, well, I tried it this way, that didn't work. I tried it this way, that didn't work. I tried it this way, I got a little bit closer. Let me iterate and let me get there. So deep learning is really just more trial and error, whereas machine learning by itself is just kind of rule-based. You go this way, you go that way, you go this way. So getting into today, right? Predictive and generative AI. This is the 2 big buzzwords. And it really is, generative AI is really kind of what I think put much more of a focus on AI in general, right? I've been doing this for 6 years, and up until ChatGPT rolled out, or OpenAI rolled out ChatGPT, a lot of my pitches on what we're selling, I really had to educate on, you're already using artificial intelligence every day. Netflix, Amazon, Google, Apple, everything, every tool that you're using has AI built into it, right? Now that generative AI is out, I more have to say, all right, well, not everything is the same AI, right? And so really kind of in your day-to-day work as fundraisers, as nonprofit employees, probably the AI types or tools that you're going to come into most often are predictive and generative, these 2 kind of buckets. And they are 2 different things, right? Again, 2 different tools used for 2 different outcomes altogether. Again, this image was created by AI. I asked it to put an image that depicts the differences between predictive and generative. One is very analytical, one is very creative, right? One is very binary, yes, no, this or that. One is kind of more fluid and subjective, right? So I think it does a great depiction. Again, I never would have been able to create something like this if it wasn't for AI on its own. So I appreciate the accessibility that it gives me. So getting into predictive AI. Predictive AI is best at answering questions when there is a defined range, when a yes or a no, this person or that person, high or low value. Raw output is usually just a 1-word answer. It's a number. It's a definitive result, right? Will X do Y? Yes. Will X do Y? No. That's predictive. It's looking at historical information to say all these patterns lead up to someone doing something like this. This is what's going to happen in the future. It's able to find complex patterns in a sea of data much deeper than humans would be able to go, right? I've been building predictive models for a while now, and before jumping into machine learning, I could use maybe 18 to 24 data points and say, all right, based on these 18 to 24 data points, I think that you are likely to make a gift in the next 12 months, or you are not, right? 18 to 24 data points is not really encompassing who you are as an individual or even your entire relationship with your organization. So it doesn't really do a good job of really covering all the different types of data that we might be able to capture like we can with artificial intelligence. AI can give us kind of every piece of data that we need to dig in and go into patterns, thousands of different calculations on who is going to do what based on what the model's seeing. I'm seeing wonderful questions in here. I really appreciate you asking these questions. That is a great one, MJ. I will get to that in just one more slide. What is generative AI? Generative AI, the other side of it, it's more open-ended. It's things like, again, for those of you who use, you kind of ask it a question and it will just be creative. It'll be kind of open, and you could ask the same question and it will come out with a different answer every time. Similar, but not word for word the same exact answer, because it is fluid, right? It's just kind of free flowing on what it's responding to. It's more subjective, it's more qualitative, right? Just like if you ask the same person, a question on their thoughts on, climate change, right? They might have the same premise, the same feeling, but they might describe it differently. They might not use the same exact words in the same exact order. That's how generative AI is working. So it's predicting what it is going to say, but in a less concrete, in a less definitive response. It's actually been around for decades, but again, it really came to the scene last year with the launch of ChatGPT. And I think what the main reason for that is predictive AI has also been around, but predictive AI, you don't interact with, right? You don't tell Amazon, hey, change my algorithm so that I only see these things and these things. I don't want to see these things anymore, right? You interact with Amazon to purchase things, and then the predictive model is going on behind the scenes to say, all right, based on that, we think you're more likely to purchase this, right? Whereas generative AI, you can go in, you can say, I want to see you put together a report based on X, Y, and Z. You get the output, and then you say, oh, I don't like that. Can you do it in the voice of a pirate? Or can you only use, words that start with the letter A? Whatever it is, these are all bad examples of how you should use it for fundraising. But whatever it is, you can have direct interaction and impact on the ultimate output of that model, which we never really had before. Kind of so accessible to our fingers to just kind of create and mold whatever it is that we want to see. So let me pause here to just kind of get to some of these questions. MJ asks, since AI is built off of existing data to predict or generate, and the data is collected, organized, et cetera, with human biases, how do we de-bias the AI output? That is a wonderful question. That is obviously coming up all over the place. Even the for-profit sector, is really talking about responsible, ethical AI, right? It's really, there's no definitive answer. The answer is really getting an understanding of how your data is tracked, what it is based on, how it's collected, looking at who has responded to that, and also who hasn't responded, who isn't tracked, right? What pieces of data are not incorporated into the CRM or whatever the database is that could be a result of that human bias, right? And then being on the lookout for what is the outcome of the model, right? Being able to dig into the features of a model and say, well, why is it responding this way? What are kind of peel back the layers of the onion and say, all right, it's responding this way because it's prioritizing X, Y, and Z. And that X, Y, and Z is a bias that we don't want to reprioritize. So it's really any question that I'm kind of, it's all about curiosity. It's all about curiosity, asking questions, asking the right questions. There's no definitive tool. AI is allowing us to kind of review the data that's coming in and test to see if there is any biases. I can speak for what our team does in our custom machine learning models. We review every data point with the clients as we get them to make sure that we understand how they're used, how they're tracked, what they're missing, if possible. And then we also review all the data points of the model as it's being built and saying, these are the top 25 features of your donor retention model. Is there anything in here that you think is leading the model one way that we don't want it to go. We don't include wealth in the model because wealth is not why people make gifts. So it's really about kind of being transparent, being responsible, and digging in and asking the questions about why is it behaving this way? What do we know about the data? How do we prepare that data in a better way, or at least moving forward, make sure that we are tracking data on the right individuals, on the right components, in the proper applications. James asked, do you think AI can help automate processes on CRMs to provide more assistance to solicit donors and help with move management? Yes, definitely. That one I'm going to hold on to. Christine, I haven't forgotten your question yet. I'm going to hold on to that as well. But I will get to them before this is over. Just to kind of give you a sense of where generative AI has been, this is an example of different models that have been out and available to the public since 2018, right? You could see, a couple here, kind of behind the scenes, not to the broad public like ChatGPT has been, but more like developers and people who have kind of beta access. I can go into these things. 2018, a few, 2019, leading up to 2020. 2023 is when things changed. These are the available models that are, again, kind of out there that you can purchase, that you can use. And this report hasn't come out yet for 2024. It's going to be coming out soon. I imagine that this is going to be, again, child's play compared to what we see in 2024, because this was produced in February of 2023. And we know the ball was just started to roll in February, right? All throughout last year. I think that ChatGPT now has 2 million developers, each creating their own product. So this is not going away anytime soon. And again, that just kind of digs into why you need to start playing around with it, testing it, trying it, iterating it as soon as you can. Again, we often get asked, is it going to replace my job? It's not going to replace your job. It is going to change your job, right? But for the better. There are things that you probably do that you wish you didn't have to spend time on, right? Things that you wish you could automate, things that you wish you could offload. For me, I hate writing, right? I hate looking at a white page and just trying to figure out how to start this report. Now I can go to generative ChatGPT, whatever my preferred tools are, and say, hey, can you help me with this? Can you start this? It's not going to be perfect, but it's at least going to give me a jumping off point. It really is like someone to bounce some ideas off of, to iterate. It's like having an intern that won't roll their eyes, won't, mutter some names under their breath about you. And as they walk away, you could ask them to do the same task literally 200 different times, and it'll just continue to go and continue to go, right? So it really is going to change what you're doing. You will not be doing the same things the same way a year from now, 2 years from now, because you're going to be able to offload so much of those things that you just don't want to do, that you don't have to do, and allow you to get that time back to dig more into the things that you do want to do, that you can do better than AI can do, that a computer can do. Again, it's similar to the internet. The internet changed your job. It didn't replace your job, but it changed your job. And now I imagine you can't think about what it would be like to go back to the internet or pre-internet days. So getting into predictive, we talk about predictive, we talk about generative. We see the value when you apply the two, right? They are two different tools. One is telling you precision. One is telling you who's going to do what and when. The other one is telling you how to reach out to them. So I love this visualization because it's a good representation of predictive being left-brained, logical, factual, objective, analytical, generative being right-brained, it's creative, it's expressive, it's subjective. They're really two different approaches. And you use your left brain and your right brain all the time, right? And in every single task, you're using both of those to kind of figure out the solution or the result and then learn how to execute on it. So being able to combine these two is allowing you to be more efficient. If you use generative AI and just generative AI, I like to think of the analogy of, if you're using generative AI to reach out to more individuals quicker, right, to hopefully get more gifts, you're just throwing more spaghetti at the wall faster, right? But you're going to get the same ratio, same end result, same response rate as you would have from not using AI. Whereas if you use predictive AI and generative AI, you could throw high quality spaghetti at the people who want to eat high quality spaghetti. So you're being precise in who you're reaching out to, right? You're identifying people that maybe haven't been prioritized before, and you're giving them the content that they're more likely to respond to. So it's really, these two tools are kind of a 1 + 1 = 3. right? And we're going to see more examples of how these are coming out and how organizations are using these. But some questions that predictive AI can answer versus generative is, again, quantitative. Will this prospect make their first gift? Yes or no. Will this donor give again with a specific time period? Yes or no. Which donors have a greater lifetime value? These ones or those ones? How likely will this donor become a monthly sustainer? High or low? Generative AI is more open-ended. Design these marketing materials that appeal to individual donor interests. Introduce unique themes or experiences for our next fundraising event. Come up with creative analogies to help me explain this concept. Again, I'm using generative AI all the time, but in fundraising, we really want to combine the two of them together. Because when we do, we're going to see significant ROIs, right? We're going to see that precision, that personalization. You're going to get better response rates because you're prioritizing the right people and you're giving them the content that they're interested in, right? Think about a newsletter. A newsletter is you reporting out to your constituents about what you did. But not all of your donors are the same, not all of your constituents are the same, and they might all be interested in the same exact components of it, right? With generative AI, you could say, all right, here's our newsletter, and here's how Scott Rosenkrans, here's what his giving history was in the last year. Tailor this newsletter to Scott's giving history to say, because of you and your gift of $200 to this fund and $300 to this fund, we were able to do X, Y, and Z, really make it specific to them. If I saw something like that, my engagement with that organization would be completely different because that's speaking to me. It's not just me giving and you kind of overarching giving a response to anybody and everybody, but it's really that collaborative, that one-on-one personalized relationship. Carvana did this wonderfully. Carvana, I'm not sure if you saw a couple months ago, they came out with 1.3 million customized videos using generative AI. So if you purchased a white Explorer in December in Buffalo, New York, it would be this video from the car's perspective of white Explorer driving through the snowy, roads of Buffalo, saying, "I went to go meet my new owner, MJ," and it just kind of like encapsulates, oh yeah, this was a memory. I don't really think about it. I just kind of use it utilitarian, but I remember the excitement of purchasing this car, right? That's the content generation. That's a personalization. But they also probably have data scientists at Carvana that if they could predict who's going to buy which car when, they could give you that video beforehand. And then if you kind of quote unquote saw yourself in that car, you probably have a much higher likelihood of purchasing, right? Because now you can visualize yourself in that at that moment in time in the area that you live in. And so by combining those two, they're not just customizing it to the person, but they're reaching out to the right people with the right information at the right time. So you see those ROIs, which allow you to get efficiency boosts, right? You're more efficient. You're spending less money to get better results, increase quality of work as a result, and then improved work satisfaction, right? If you're a carpenter, and you've probably learned by now that I love using analogies. I assure you, most of these are my own. I don't use AI for them. Doesn't mean that they're any good. But if you're a carpenter and you've been using tools from the 1800s, right? And then somebody says, hey, here's some power tools. Now you have the tools to do your job right and efficiently, right? And quicker and faster and more precise and more detailed. You're probably going to enjoy your work a lot better, right? There are some people that enjoy using, kind of the more manual labor, but more people who are doing kind of construction, like you're going to be able to do your job that much more efficiently, that much more better, and you're going to feel better about the work you do and want to do more of it. Right? So it kind of becomes this cyclical process, right? Using these tools allow you to do your work better, which allow you to feel better about your work. And then you want to do more work. And then you continue down that road and just kind of exponentially grow. Not only is this available, but it is a specific need, right? This report came out recently that looking at nonprofit employees, and it said 74% of nonprofit employees said they're looking or will be looking for a new job this year. 68% of them were uncertain if they'd be looking for another nonprofit job. And the main reason, or tied for the number one reason, was too much responsibility and not enough resources, right? ChatGPT, or really any of these AI models, are $20 a month, right? $240 a year per person. To kind of run the numbers, and again, I love numbers, I'm just kind of crunching numbers. Average salary is $48,000 for a nonprofit employee. Paid version of ChatGPT is $240 a year. That's equivalent to a 0.5 salary 0.5% salary increase, right? A recent study has shown that ChatGPT can lead to 14% to 35% productivity gains. That came out in December, and that was using AI models from 2020 or 2021, which are nothing compared to where we are today. So if you can get 14 to 35% productivity gains from a tool that is a 0.5% salary increase for the average nonprofit employee, you couldn't get that type of productivity if you just gave them $240 that year, right? So it's such an incredible investment as long as you know how to use the tool right. So getting into some of the more use cases, right? Again, we kind of peppered these through, but idea generator, right? I was talking to someone who they had a new award for the community and they want to come up with a creative, fun, playful name, and they used ChatGPT to do that. They said, give me 20 examples. Now, not all of them were hits. Some of them were misses, right? But it was at least a jumping off point to come up with a name that they ultimately used. To do that with your team, that required at least an hour's worth of a meeting, right? To brainstorm and come up with all these things, pulling in 10 different team members that could be doing work elsewhere, right? And then you have to review after the process of which one you decided was going to be like taking so much more work. It took 30 seconds and then you're done. Then you can move on to the next thing, right? Appeals. At the very least, if you're writing grant proposals, if you're writing appeals, if you're writing letters, if you're writing emails, use ChatGPT to prove, to edit, to think about how it might come across. Think about some concepts that maybe you haven't thought of, or hey, I'm sending this email to this donor, they haven't given in a while, but they were a really strong supporter. Review this and let me know if there's anything I'm missing or anything that you think I could present in a different way to get them to be interested and interested. Sorry, I just saw MJ's response about being from Buffalo. Interested in rejoining and recommitting to our organization, right? Again, use it as a person to bounce ideas off of, right? It's there. So now getting into some of those questions, seeing an opportunity for AI to help nonprofits engage board members, both in their missions as well as fundraising strategies, right? Again, this is where not every individual is the same. So not every person on your board is the same. Think about where these individuals come from. What is their business background? How did they come into the board? How long have they been there? Where have you seen them get more involved or less involved? Have they pushed back on things? Have they been really supportive of things? Kind of build a profile of who that individual is. And then I would honestly ask ChatGPT, say, this is one of my board members. This is my mission. How can I bring them in, right? Give me some creative ways to have them partner alongside us on this upcoming project that we have, both in the mission of what we're doing outwards to our community, but also in fundraising strategies. Like, these questions are wonderful questions for AI. And I do this all the time, right? If I'm getting into, again, we just started a podcast. I don't know anything about a podcast. So I said, hey, how can you help me create a podcast? What are the things I don't know that I need to know? It knows basically more than the average person on almost everything, right? So the things that you aren't aware of, just kind of run it through. MJ, you use ChatGPT to edit a grant proposal narrative down to the page limit. It wasn't perfect, but it helped me see more concise ways and reword phrases. Exactly, right? And you can put in the proposal request, right? You can put in the website or downloads of your organization's mission and say, help me frame our mission to this proposal for this specific project. It could do that, or like you did it manually, and then say, review this and review these materials to see how I could do it a little bit better. Yeah, I'd love to, Kellyanne, seeing how everyone else is using AI, please share it in the chat. I love talking about these examples because I always learn something new, right? Jamie, do you think AI can help automate processes on CRMs to provide more assistance to solicit donors and help with mood management? Yes, I do. However, if you're asking about AI in CRMs, right? It's a tool that's probably readily available for a lot of CRMs. I think Salesforce has Einstein. I'm sure the other ones are coming out with AI soon enough. Just think about this, kind of goes to MJ's question. Think about the data that it's being used off. It's being used off of data that is just in the CRM, right? You might have an organization that uses CRM and then MailChimp or Constant Contact or other tools to engage with people, not just donors, but constituents across the board. You might have a volunteer database, right? So if you're using an AI tool that's just based off of data in your CRM, it's only going to know the individuals that are in there and the engagement that they have based in there. But your constituents don't give just because of their giving history. They give because of all the other components, because they're clicking through some of your emails, because they're volunteering at different events that you attend, because they attend different events, because they go on your website, they share your posts on Facebook. So the more data that you can pull in to holistically describe how these people are engaging with you, the better you can predict their likelihood for moves management or to solicit. So I'd love to talk to you after this about how we can kind of things that I've seen work, things that I've seen happen. But using data in any way is a start if you are not. I promise I'm not shamelessly plugging my podcast, but we just hosted yesterday. We interviewed someone and they used a phrase that I haven't heard before, but I love. It is, using your data is not a choice, it's your responsibility, right? You've been tracking this data for a long time. This data speaks to how these individuals are engaging with you. And your mission or your role is to further your mission, right? The way you further that is by the people who are supporting you or people that you can get to support you. So this data is the key to identifying who's more likely to support you at further levels or who isn't, right? Or who can support you for the first time or who's going to stop supporting you. So using this allows you to put the people who have interest into the mission that you're trying to execute on more efficiently. So it really is a responsibility to make sure that you're using that in any way you can. I'm not saying that you have to jump into AI predictive models today, because I know that there's a lot of, you need to know what tools, what the objectives are and so on, but start the conversation, figure out how you can get there. And again, donor search, if you're a donor search client and you're not aware, we have a product called MLR, which is a free AI model, predictive model that you have access to already if you have a contract. So make sure that you're using the tools that are available to you and really putting that data to use, because it really is your responsibility. Moving into responsible AI for pretty great segue that I wasn't entirely planning. We don't have the same luxury that the for-profit sector has, right? Responsible AI is being talked about globally. The EU just passed their bill on using responsible AI. India, on the opposite end, backtracked their law on responsible AI because the entrepreneurs, because the leaders of the for-profit organizations push so hard on it, right? Because it doesn't work for them. We need to figure this out for ourselves, right? We can't wait for the government to come up with responsible AI practices for fundraising because they don't think about fundraising like we do, right? We know that what works for us doesn't always work for the for-profit sector and vice versa. For-profits are prioritizing profit. We are prioritizing impact, right? And so it's not just for us to be responsible and ethical, but we need to apply tools that are beneficial as well. So by being able to do that, we're able to make sure that we're not working with bad actors. Again, a great example is we all know what Facebook is doing, right? We all know the negative impact Facebook has had on especially teen girls, but a number of different groups and underrepresented groups. But they reported a record quarter in Q4 of 2023 because people are still using it, because they still get some value out of it. We don't have that luxury. The value we have that we provide to our constituents is trust. Trust that we are using and stewarding your dollars the way that you expect us to do so, and that we're committing it to the mission. So if there is any misstep, we not only harm potentially our nonprofit, but the sector as a whole, right? So we just need to be more diligent, more aware. I'm saying all this because there is an organization, I co-lead this with a number of individuals across sectors, across vendors. This is not run by Donor Search. This is not even a membership organization, but Fundraising AI. It's on LinkedIn. Please join it. Our podcast is the Fundraising AI podcast, again, on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube. But it is all talking about using AI responsibly, ethically, beneficially in the nonprofit sector, building a framework, and initiating that conversation on where do I start, how do I begin, what are next steps. I'm not going to go through all these, but this is in the resources, and it's really just as you get started on this role, different questions to ask, different ways to get started, kind of a roadmap, if you will, to make sure you're getting out there, make sure you're asking questions, and you're really trying to figure out ways to just give it a run, right? Test it out. It's all about iterating. It's all about testing. It's all about beta testing. So it's there, it's accessible, it's free, right? Make sure that you're just seeing how it can level you up, because in 5 years' time, everyone is going to be using it on a daily basis, and you want to make sure that you're involved in that group as well. So that's it for the slides. Let me get to some of the questions. I appreciate you sitting with me while I'm running through this. So another question in here, Dottie, I've been using ChatGPT to make VA verbiage, especially symptoms for PTSD, into 5th grade verbiage. I never thought of using it to help me understand how to do grants or podcasts. It really is such a wonderful tool. Like, I oftentimes, and I've been in the space for 6 years, there are times that I still, muscle memory, go to, I don't really know how to do this. Let me just kind of figure it out, or look up some websites that could kind of help me how to do it. And then I spend an hour, hour and a half, and realize I could have just asked ChatGPT. I just wasted so much time, so much effort. One easy way that I find is a way to kind of get a sense of how LLMs will produce different results is, if you're using Chrome, I'm not sure about other browsers, but you can go into your setting, you can change your default search engine, and you can change it to Bing or Copilot, right? So if, I travel for work, and sometimes my wife and child join me, and we'll say, all right, what are some things that we should be doing if we're going to Savannah, Georgia, right? And you see those articles that come up that say 10 things to do in Savannah, Georgia in the fall, 10 things to do for, and I'm not going to read through all them because there's so much filler. But if I use Bing, it'll read all through them all for me, and then compile the things, knowing that I'm vegetarian, knowing I have a young child, knowing we're going in the fall, and say, here's the things that you should do based on your previous interests. And like, I just spent 5 minutes to do something that would have taken 2 hours worth of time. I see Grammarly is being used. Is there an AI tool for nonprofits that address all or multiple areas that you list on this page? Recommendations. Again, these are different tools, right? And that's Jillian, you bring up a great comment, or a great thought, that when jumping into AI, you need to know the question you want to answer, right? Know the objective you want to use it for, because not all objectives are the same. And so the tools applied aren't all going to do the same thing, right? Just like you wouldn't go to a mechanic to paint a portrait of your family, right? You go to a mechanic to fix your car. You wouldn't go to a baker to clean your house, right? You go to a baker to bake you a cake. Like, it's very specialized in what it is that you're doing. So recommendations, I can put together some that I've seen work, but I would really go to, again, Fundraising AI. We really try to make this resource, and there's videos. We had a global summit October of last year, a 2-day summit. We're going to have another summit this year in October. We just announced the date, but all the videos from those summits are there. People talking about how to use it, people talking about different tools, ways that they're going on. We talk about different tools that are accessible, but you can use tools. I guess another way to do it is, if I go back here, you can use ChatGPT for all of these, right? You can use ChatGPT for, there's ChatGPT, there's Perplexity, there's Bing, there's Gemini, there's so many different tools. There's Pi, there's Claude, so many different tools that are coming out. And I would encourage you to try different ones, right? Not all ones work the same way. I probably have 4 or 5 tools that I use on a daily basis, all for different things, because I know what works for some and what works for others. How else are we? Grammarly, I think that was mentioned. I might have brought that up already. Use AI to help with our business plan, pitch deck, form outlines for various workshops. We also use it to help us develop marketing strategies, social media posts, SEO keywords, and hashtags. I love that. I love that. That is perfect. That is, you're trying it. You probably tried it one place, saw that it was helpful, and then tried it somewhere else, and then tried it somewhere else. It's not just, again, a one size fits all. It's not going to solve everything for you, but you need to jump in and say, here's an area where I can start using it, right? Another example, again, we talked about this in our podcast, but there's probably different roles of people who are attending here, right? There might be some, directors of marketing. There might be some gift officers. There might be some prospect researchers. I would put in, and I could put it, once I'm once I'm done with this, I can maybe put it in the chat or in the lobby. Um, you could go to ChatGPT and say, give it a role, tell it who it's going to act as, right? So I'd often use the role of, you are a coach who is teaching individuals how to use generative AI in their day-to-day roles, right? Perfect. I am a prospect researcher. Give me 30 examples, detailed, specific as possible, of how I should be using generative AI or how I can use it. Again, they're not all going to be hits, but out of 30, you're going to get some. If you don't like those 30, ask for another 30, ask for 300. Like, just don't stop going until you are able to come up with something to get you started. But use it to help it, you use it, right? And it's kind of the whole help me help you thing, right? Like, figure out how it can, just work on how to talk to it, and then by using it, you'll learn how to use it better, right? There are, you can follow people on LinkedIn. I'll share some people that we follow on LinkedIn that's always talking about it, that I've learned a lot from. These are probably the big three that I follow. They're putting something out basically every single day. These by far are not the only ones. There are ones that there are probably 7 that I follow just on AI for LinkedIn. There are a number that I follow for podcasting, for marketing. So these are more just kind of general what's going on in the generative AI space. But once you kind of get into that role, you'll start seeing other people that follow them, that post them, that comment on those individuals' posts, and get more specific into what you might be interested in. Again, Kellyanne, thank you for sharing some of those links on the podcast, on the resources and LinkedIn page. I know we have a couple more minutes. Any other questions out there? I'm hoping that this was helpful. I'm hoping I didn't throw too much spaghetti at the wall, but that some of it stuck and some of it was quality spaghetti.
Scott, I don't mean to jump in here, but I would really be remiss if I did not thank you for this really amazing and super informative session. There's a lot of note taking going on, and really, you are a wellspring of information, and truly appreciate it. Um, I do want to thank you for your time. I don't see if there are any other questions for you. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything else that you'd like to, and then just direct everybody to where we'll be moving on afterwards. So once again, thank you so much. And if you have any closing remarks, please feel free.
Yeah, well, thank you all. James, just a question about donor search. We provide data to organizations of all shapes and sizes on identifying, it's all prospect research data, but again, we do have AI models from the ground floor level all the way up to the custom size. So please reach out. You can reach out to me, and I'll put you in contact with someone that might be able to help you and give you a little bit more detail based upon what it is that you're looking for. But thank you, Allison. Thank you, Kellyanne. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, I'm hoping I did a service to the AI and fundraising community.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure you'll be getting a lot of outreach after this. I appreciate it. And if anybody, for some reason, needs us to connect you with Scott, let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. So what will happen now, we're going to be closing out this webinar. You're going to hop back into the lobby, and then you will be going to the next session, The Power of Networking, moderated by Tommy DeMisa. Thanks again, Scott. Have a great day. Thank you,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Have a great day.